the title of today's webinar is Streamlining Your Workplace, Maximizing Your Efficiency with Intranet Workflows and Microsoft 365. So what does that mean? Our learning objectives today is to look at something called Power Automate, which you may have heard of before. When it was first introduced a few years ago, it was called Flow, and then they changed the name to Power Automate. So we're going to talk about what Power Automate is, what it does, and also the benefits of using Power Automate. We'll then look at how Power Automate can be used with SharePoint. So if you've got an intranet within your organization, or you're looking at setting one up, how that can then link in with Power Automate, as well as across other 365 apps as well. So for example, Microsoft Teams, Outlook, OneDrive, Excel, Microsoft Word, Planner. We'll look at different examples of how that can be used. We will look at real world examples, so I'll actually be able to show you our intranet at KISS and also some of the workflows that myself and James have set up within that intranet, and how those run within the organization and make a lot of our kind of day-to-day processes a lot easier. Finally, at the end, I will just run through a few kind of steps that would need to be taken in order to set up Power Automate within your organization, any potential challenges that you might need to overcome as well. Want to kind of start right from the basics. So if you attended our webinar last month, then James went through what SharePoint is. So essentially it's a way of setting up your staff or your organization's intranet. It's very good at improving communication because you can have pages on there which provide information on things like what different departments are doing, you know, who reports to who, different events that are taking place. You can publish news articles. You've got the ability to store documents there. So you've got document libraries, and document libraries comes with the ability to add things like version control, potentially approval processes, and also the ability to edit documents with multiple individuals in real time. So lots of benefits in there for collaboration and for productivity as well. And also just general employee engagement. Employees have got somewhere to go to find out about what's happening, to work on documents, to comment on posts and things like that. So it really assists with collaboration and engagement. So what is Power Automate? So Power Automate, I've got a little bit of a screenshot there on the right hand side, is essentially the idea where we are automating workflows. So if we have got a process that has multiple steps in, we could go on to Power Automate and hopefully convert that into an automated workflow that runs through the site. The flows that you're creating and that we'll look at today are stored in the cloud. So the ability is that you're able to access that from anywhere, and also you're able to share it with other users who might need to collaborate on those workflows with you. There is something called Power Automate Desktop, which allows you to create desktop flows. It's a little bit different. That's not something that we're going to be talking about today. We're just going to look at a browser-based version and creating and managing those flows within the cloud. There are different types of flows within Power Automate. So the screenshot I've got there on the right hand side is what's referred to as an automated flow. And automated flows have something called a trigger. So automated flows are automatically triggered by a particular event. And in the example on the right hand side, you can see at the top there, our first kind of step or action, it says when a new response is submitted. So the example of a trigger is if someone submits a response to a form or quiz on Microsoft Forms, then it triggers this workflow and the steps that you can see underneath. And we'll actually have a look at one of those examples in a few minutes' time. So that's an automated flow. We also have something called instant flows. So instant flows are where you are saying, I want this flow to run now. So you are pressing a button. Sometimes you're then putting in additional information about how you want that flow to run, and that flow runs straight away through a series of steps that you've kind of set it up to run. The final type is a scheduled flow, and a scheduled flow runs on a schedule. So you would say, for example, I want this flow to run every Monday morning at 9 o'clock, or I want this flow to run on the first Tuesday of every month, and it would automatically run. Even if you're not logged into your computer, it will automatically run through the various steps that you've specified. Within each flow, we may have a trigger. if it's an automated flow. We will have actions, so what the flow is doing, what steps it's carrying out. So in that example on the right hand side, for example, you can see that it's getting details from the response to the form, it's adding a row into an Excel table, it's then listing rows that are present in a table. So those are all the different actions that it's going through. You may have conditions within your flow. So you may want to say, actually, if this is true, if a certain condition is true, we're going to follow this series of steps. If it's not, we're going to follow a slightly different series of steps. All of the actions, or most of the actions, will have something called a connector. So that's indicated by the little icons that you can see to the left side of each of those actions in my flow there in the screenshot. So connectors are going to be things like SharePoint, Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Teams. It's essentially the app that it's connecting to perform that particular action. All of the connectors that we'll look at today are Microsoft 365. There are things called external connectors, so you can create steps which link to other apps that aren't Microsoft apps. We're not going to cover those off, but sometimes it is possible if you use another application within your organization that possibly there may be a connector within Power Automate that would allow you to link to that application and create steps off of that. A benefit of Power Automate is troubleshooting. So every time your flow runs, you are able to view details of that run. So you'll be able to see when it ran, was it successful or did it fail? If it failed, which step did it fail at? And we'll have an error code there to see kind of why it failed. We'll be able to see how long each of the steps took. So you can see maybe is there a bit of a bottleneck where actually this step is taking a long time to run and it's kind of causing a delay for the rest of the flow. So all of those areas we can go in and troubleshoot and see if it's working correctly. We've also got the ability to test it as well. So depending on the flow, we test different flows in different ways. But again, we've got that option to run through those steps, check that they're all working correctly, and things like conditions, check that it's then taking the correct route based on those conditions. Templates are available in Power Automate. So it's always worth, if you're going to be creating a new flow, to go into the templates area, which I'll show you in a moment, and check, is there already a template out there that does what you're looking to do or very, very similar? Because you can always change it a little bit later on if needed. That obviously saves you having to create a brand new flow from scratch. Copilot is also inbuilt to Power Automate as well, so you can use Copilot to create your flows. You can type in a description of what you're looking for your flow to do, and it can then create, the trigger and the steps for you. Again, you would then need some Power Automate experience to be able to go in and kind of fine tune that. It's not always going to be perfect first time. And you can also use Copilot once you've created a flow. So you can use that Copilot prompt box to say, actually, I want to create a new step. Maybe I want to create a new step to send someone an email. Can you set that up for me? And Copilot will be able to add that step into your flow. So taking those two together, we've got SharePoint, we've got Power Automate. How can those kind of combine to make something a little bit more powerful? The first idea is that we can obviously streamline our processes by automating any repetitive tasks. So if you have maybe a process currently in your organization, maybe it's very manual, maybe it doesn't really work very well, there's room for error, we would be able to go into Power Automate, hopefully, and create that process for you and automate it. It enhances collaboration because by using Power Automate, we are connecting SharePoint with other apps. So we can say, for example, actually, if someone goes in and creates, adds a new document into a SharePoint library, I want to send this group of people a message on Microsoft Teams, or I want to send this person an email. We're bringing people together and enhancing collaboration. Improving efficiency. So again, if you set up an automated workflow, hopefully that's going to be more efficient than someone maybe typing information into a Word document or using a paper form. Increases visibility. So again, with the idea of being able to send Microsoft Teams messages, notifications, emails, it means that people are actually going to be more aware of things that are happening on SharePoint. They're getting real-time updates and notifications rather than having to go on and kind of refresh a page or go in and check a document library. And reduces manual errors as well. So if you currently have a process where maybe someone is filling in a printed out piece of paper and handing it to someone, and then that person is typing the information from the piece of paper into an Excel file, there's obviously, it's very slow, but there's also room for error as well. So we want to remove that. We're able to link other apps in with Power Automate. So like I mentioned, SharePoint, we've got things like streamlining document management in terms of approvals, uploading new documents, editing documents. And we can also use the SharePoint intranet to host workflow triggers as well. So maybe you've got a workflow where someone is going in and filling in a form in Microsoft Forms. Well, we can include a button on the SharePoint page that takes users to that form rather than, just emailing the whole company with a link to the form. Let's pop it on SharePoint. Or even better, we can actually embed a Microsoft form onto a SharePoint page. So that's obviously going to save clicks and people kind of navigating away from the internet. We've got it on the page there for them already. We can connect with Microsoft Forms. So like I said, things like data collection, quizzes, and we can link that through to Power Automate. Microsoft Teams, so we can use that for notifications, we can use it for approvals, and we've got that idea of enhanced collaboration. Maybe we're messaging a group of individuals or a channel that already exists within Teams. So people receive that notification and they're then able to message each other within that chat or channel about that notification rather than sending individual emails off to people. Outlook, so we can use Power Automate for automated email management. So for example, when I receive an email, automatically upload any attachments to SharePoint. Now, a really basic example where we could use Outlook. And notifications as well. So there are steps and actions within Power Automate that allows us to send email notifications. We can say who that's going to, what the subject is. We can attach documents. So we've got those available as well. Microsoft Planner, which you may have used. If you haven't, it's a 365 app that allows you to create plans, and you can create tasks within those plans. You can assign tasks to people. You can go in and make notes, update the status of the task that you've been assigned. So we can link that with Power Automate as well. OneDrive, again, so relating to file storage and management. Microsoft Excel, so we can use Power Automate to automate data input into tables, as well as managing data within existing tables as well. So we can use Power Automate to look at a table and say, hey, what's that value in that column? And if it's this, do this. And if it's that, do this. So it's input and management. And Microsoft Word. So for example, inputting data perhaps from a form into a document template. We can then do further steps, convert it into PDF, send it in an email, and we can follow on from that. Hopefully that's maybe got kind of something rolling in your mind. You think, oh, actually, yeah, I could combine this with this, and then we could do this. And maybe as well, if you can think of any current processes that you work on or you're aware of in your organization that maybe aren't quite working or a little bit slow, someone's having to do something, every morning, it's taking time. Let's try and automate it. I will point out that there is automation available within SharePoint. It's kind of inbuilt within SharePoint that allows you to set up workflows without having to go into Power Automate. So it's a similar idea. So the idea that you could have a trigger, or it could be an automation that you're kind of just running yourself at a certain point. But it saves you having to kind of learn Power Automate it and manage it through Power Automate. They're a lot easier to set up and to manage. I will show you those now because they're easier to use. So if that solves your problems or any workflows that you have, brilliant. But as we'll see in a minute, there are limitations to those. So I'm going to pop into SharePoint and here we go. So this is our KISS SharePoint that we've got set up in here. Let's just go back to the main page. I'm just going to navigate to our document library. And I'll go into documents. Okay, so in here, I've got an automate button at the top, and clicking on that automate button allows me to set up rules, quick steps, or configure approvals. You can also link to flows that you've set up in Power Automate as well, but for now, let's stick with these ones that are inbuilt into SharePoint. With rules, these are a bit like the kind of automated workflows that you have within Power Automate. So they're going to have a trigger, and then once that trigger is triggered, once that trigger happens, we then follow a series of steps. So I can click create a rule. I choose what my trigger is. So I'm working within a document library, which means that I can say, for example, if a file or the metadata of a file is modified, if a new file is added, if a file is deleted, or perhaps you've set up like a custom column within your document library which contains a date. So for example, a deadline, and we can say actually when that deadline is coming up, then we want to take a series of steps. This also applies within SharePoint lists as well. So if you use SharePoint lists, you can follow the same steps. These rules will look slightly different, but it's the same idea. So, you know, if a new item is added into a SharePoint list, if a date is approaching within a SharePoint list, it works the same way. So, for example, a new file is added. When a new file is added, now we've got the option to put a condition in here if we want to. So we can either say, whenever a new file is added, let's always do these steps. Or we can say, actually, only run the steps if a column is equal to a particular value or contains a particular value. I'm going to set it to always. The steps we then have available is to send an email. We could either type a name or email address into there, or we can, you know, set it up as maybe the person who modified it, the person who created it, or alternatively to set a value of a particular column to a particular value. If we choose the email option, we can also put in some custom text for the email as well. Once we've set that up, we can hit create. That's going to start working straight away. It's turned on. So from this point forward, if anyone uploads a new file, then it will send me an email. Really easy to manage because I can go up to here, automate, rules, manage my rules. It's there. I can turn it off or on, or I can click on it to make changes or delete it. Okay, and anyone can go in and access that. So anyone could go in and change it or turn it off, which obviously is a little bit of a disadvantage, but we can set those up really easily. The other option is to set up a quick step. Now this is like not a workflow that has a trigger, but it's something that we are triggering ourselves, so we are asking it to run. So we can create a quick step, and we can create it either for a selected file or for the whole document library. If it's a document library, you will need to set up a flow within Power Automate. But if it's a selected file or an individual record, if you're working within a SharePoint list, then you can choose, actually, I'm going to, let's say, draft an email. And again, you can use the drop downs to say, this is what I want to do, this is who I want it to go to. We'll give it a name. Do I want to copy people in? What do I want the email subject to be? Do I want to include a link to the item within the body of the message itself? So quite a few different options in there. I can hit create, it's turned on. And because that's something that I would need to trigger myself, it just means that if I have one or more files selected and I go back to that automate option, I can run that rule or quick step that I just set up. Again, we can manage those really easily. We can go into quick steps, manage them, edit them, turn them off or on, whatever we need to do. The final inbuilt option is approvals. So we can turn on approvals in here. So we can enable it. We can click apply. And it's going to add in a new column here called approval status. And we can see that any documents that are currently sitting in that document library have a status of not submitted. If I wanted to submit them, I'd have to click on them. I can then put in the names of the approvers and decide whether they need to approve it in a certain order or just one of them needs to approve it, and any comments I want to add, and then submit that. And that would go across to them in their emails and also Microsoft Teams, and they could obviously approve or reject that item. So those are great if that matches exactly what you're looking to do. I definitely recommend using them. However, as you can see, there are limitations. Yeah, so just remember to turn that off before suddenly I'm having to approve the whole company's documents. There's limitations to those, as I'll point out in here. Here we go. So with Power Automate, we're going to get a lot more flexibility. So some of those options are like, send an email or do this. Well, actually, what if I want to send a message within a Teams chat? Or what if I want to send this person an email and I want to attach a document? And then I also, after that, want to set up a Teams channel or something. So perhaps we want additional steps in there. With Power Automate, we've got that ability to integrate with additional 365 apps. So for example, with Excel, with Microsoft Planner, we didn't have that option when we were looking at those within SharePoint just now. Power Automate provides better visibility and tracking. So with those inbuilt options that we've just looked at, I can't see, when did that run? How many times has this sent this person an email because someone's added a new document? We can't go in and view that. And also error handling and troubleshooting. So those inbuilt options are very, very straightforward and very simple. So you shouldn't have any issues with them. But if you want something a little bit more complex, then obviously Power Automate, we've got the ability to troubleshoot, to test and things like that. So what I will now show you is Power Automate. So if I go into here, there we go. So this is the Power Automate homepage. You can get to it by going to make.powerautomate.com. The homepage straight away, we can see that option to create a workflow with Copilot. And again, definitely worth giving it a go rather than starting from scratch, particularly if you're not as confident using Power Automate. We have, like I said, you've got those templates available, so always worth checking. There's a search facility at the top. You can also filter them from here as well. And when you're clicking on a template, it provides you a little bit of information about exactly what that does, and it also tells you the connections that it'll be using as well, and sometimes it kind of just prompts you to log into 365 again, just so it can set those connections up. Once that's set up, you're obviously then free to do what you want with it. You can delete steps, add new steps, change the options, but it's a great starting point if there's a template that's close to what you're looking for. We've got a create button, so if you do just want to create a flow from scratch, we've got those three options. So an automated cloud flow, where you're going to go in and select the trigger that you need, an instant cloud flow, which is one that you'll be triggering manually yourself, or that scheduled cloud flow, where you're saying this is going to run at a certain point every day or every week or month or whatever you want to do. Once you start creating your flows, they go into this My Flows area, and they'll sit in Cloud Flows. So you can see here all the different flows that we've got set up. Some are running, some are old and disabled, but we've got the ability here to see the name of the flows. We can see when it was last modified, the type of flow, and when I hover over it, the ability to go in and edit it, share it as well. If you do share any flows with other users in terms of them kind of helping you manage those flows, so for example, James and I often share flows with each other so that, if I'm on annual leave and the flow stops working, James is able to go in and, edit the actions and see what's happening. So if you share a flow with someone, or if they share a flow with you, they will go into this shared with me area, and you can pick them up from here. Again, same actions available, it just sits under a different heading. With all of the flows, you can click on the name of a flow. I'm just going to go into this one. You can click on the name of a flow and it will give you some information. So, for example, who the owner is, when it was created, when it was last modified. We can see the connections it uses, who, if there are any co-owners, who the co-owners are. We can see the average time it takes to run. So this was a nice quick one. And underneath we have a 28-day run history. So I can see all the times when the flow has run, how long it took, and also whether it was successful or whether it failed. I will mention that if a flow fails, you sometimes don't immediately get an email saying, hey, this flow's failed, you need to go and have a look at it. Occasionally the email might be a couple of hours later, or sometimes it can be even later than that. So I'll show you an example of a flow in a moment where we've added in a step to say, actually, if this flow fails, send me an email. So there was ways of getting around that. But you might notice if you're setting up flows, you might think, oh, it failed, but it didn't tell me straight away. There are ways of getting around that. I can click on any of these runs. So I can click on this run here and it will show me the steps it took. I've got a nice tick next to each step to tell me that it completed, how long each step took. If you've got a condition, I can expand that and I can see which kind of route it took. So this one went down the false route and sent an email. And also I can click on each of the steps and it will tell me kind of the inputs and outputs within that step itself. So if I'm looking to see exactly what it was looking at, what information it was using, so for example, this was about a form that was submitted. I can see it was submitted by Steve Howe, so I'm getting that sort of information as well. And if the flow had failed, we would get information about the error and we'd be able to see exactly which step that flow failed on. If I go into the edit mode, I'll show you exactly what this flow does. So this flow here, it is an automated flow, so it's triggered by a response to a form. Now, this flow is for our acceptable use policy. So on our SharePoint, if I just go back to the SharePoint homepage. Oh, wrong one. There we go. On our SharePoint homepage, if I just scroll down, we've got a link to our compliance page. In the compliance page, we have a list of all of our ISO policies, and each member of staff is required to kind of review each policy each year. So with this flow here, this is referencing our acceptable use policy. So the idea is that a user will come in, they click on acceptable use policy, they're able to read and review that policy directly on that page. So it's embedded as PDF. And on the right hand side, I've embedded a Microsoft Forms form so they can go in and say, this is my name, this is my job title, I confirm that I've read this policy, or perhaps the policy is not relevant to my job role. And they've also got the ability to add any comments or any concerns that they may have as well. In the flow is triggered by someone submitting a response to that form. And if I click on it, it will tell you that. There we go. So acceptable use policy confirmation, that's what the form is called. It's getting the details of that response, and it's then adding that information into a row in a table in Excel. So I've got a table set up. I've actually saved it in Microsoft Teams, so multiple people can access it within one of our channels, and it's grabbing all of those response details, their name, what option they ticked, any comments they made, and it's popping it into a table. That table is actually part of a wider file that has all of the tables for all of the different policies. So we've got one document or one file for everyone to go in and be able to have a look at that. Here you can see where it's grabbing the information from each question or each answer within the form and putting it into different columns within the Excel file. So this is what we'd refer to as dynamic content. So when you're working within a flow, you can say, actually grab that information that we got from the trigger or that we got from this action a minute ago and pull that through and use it in this action. So that's what's happening there. We've then got a condition. So if I click on that one, it's a little bit hard to see, but this condition is saying if the user has made a comment in that comments box, then send an email to myself and James just telling us that someone's reviewed that policy and any comments they've made, and also send an email across to our compliance manager as well, because he wants to be made aware straight away if anyone's kind of got any concerns or comments about the policies. If they haven't made a comment, it just sends an email to myself and James just to alert us that someone's going in and accessing the policies, just because we want to be aware of it. But the compliance manager is, he only wants to know if someone's been making comments. He can access the Excel workbook at any time if he wants to see exactly, who's been looking at them and what they've been, what time they've been accessing them. So that's all available in that one flow, and we've got a flow for each of those 25 or 26 policies that we've got on our intranet. So straight away, if we didn't have Power Automate, that process of people reviewing the policies, maybe emailing someone to say I've read it, or signing a bit of paper, would be so much harder to manage. This flow here, so I'm just kind of going to go for a few examples that work in different ways. This one is a little bit more complicated. It's a similar idea, but this is a flow that manages responses to our cybersecurity quiz. So within our intranet, we have cybersecurity training, so we have videos for users to watch, and we have a little bit of a quiz at the end just to test their knowledge. If they score 80% or more, they pass. If they don't, they fail, and they're able to retake the quiz. That again, we've got managed by a flow. So the trigger is the same idea. So if someone submits a response to that quiz on Microsoft Forms, we're getting those response details. We're adding the details of that response into an Excel table. So we've got that table of everyone's responses and what answers they chose and things like that. There's then a little bit of an extra step. This is just a slight limitation of kind of Power Automate and Excel, in that if you're inputting information into an Excel table, any columns which have got any kind of formulas or functions in don't work straight away. So in order to work out if someone has passed because of what score they've got, we're actually having to temporarily export the data to another spreadsheet and then pop it back in again, the details of which I won't kind of cover, but we're just doing that so that we're getting the percentage of the questions that they've got right. We're then getting that row, so that individual's response. We've got a few different kind of data formatting steps where we're calculating their result as a percentage, and also we're formatting the date and time when they took that quiz, just so that we can input that onto a certificate which we're going to generate, and that's going to be in a UK format rather than in the American format. So that's what those few steps do there. We've then got a condition. So the condition is checking whether they passed or not, which is stored in the Excel file. And if I open that up, if they have passed, we're populating a certificate template that we created. So we're putting in things like their name and the date and time. We're saving that template into SharePoint. So another kind of way that we can link it back to SharePoint. We're converting that Word document into a PDF, because when we email it out, we're going to really want it as a PDF rather than a Word document, which again, we're saving the PDF to SharePoint. It means we can go back and grab that certificate anytime we need it. We're then taking the details of that PDF and we're sending it in an email. So we're emailing the user saying, hey, congratulations, you passed. Here's a copy of your certificate attached. We're also sending emails to, I think, myself, James, and also HR, and HR gets sent a copy of the certificate as well. If they didn't pass, again, we've got emails going to myself, James, I believe HR, and also importantly to the user themselves saying, hey, unfortunately you didn't pass, but here's a link to click on to retake the quiz. So a few extra steps, a little bit more complicated, but again, really, really useful, and definitely worth taking the time to set up and to manage rather than trying to do that whole process manually. What else have we got along here? So let's move that down. This one is an example of a scheduled flow. So this is actually a reminder that gets sent out to users. So our cybersecurity quiz, we want users to complete every year. So this is triggered every day at 5 minutes past 1. It sounds very specific, but I have quite a lot of scheduled flows. I'm trying to make them not all run at the same time. So 5 past 1, it goes into that table where we've got all of the user's responses stored. And within that table, we've added a couple of extra columns that essentially adds 365 days to when they completed the quiz. And if that date is equal to today, then it says that they are due a reminder. So this apply to each here looks at each row of the Excel file, and the condition looks at that kind of reminder date today column, and if it has the word yes in it, then it will send an email to that individual just saying, hey, you last completed this a year ago, can you please click this link and go back in and review the videos and retake the quiz. If the reminder date isn't today, it doesn't do anything, and it does that for each of those rows within the table. So again, a lot better than me logging in, 9 o'clock every morning and trying to go into the Excel spreadsheet and work out who needs a reminder today and manually sending them the emails. That does it all for me. This one here is an example of a manually triggered flow. This is one that James created that migrates SharePoint pages between 2 sites. So if you've worked with SharePoint before, and if you have multiple sites, you may have had the situation where, unfortunately, you create a page in a site and then you think, oh, actually, I should have popped that in the other site, created it in the wrong place. So with this one, it's manually triggered, so I'd have to go in and press a button to run it. When I do that, it asks me to confirm what the source site is, so where the page is currently, and where the destination site is, so where I want it copied to. It's then going to go in and get the items within SharePoint, the items being the pages, and specifically only the pages where we've got a column called migrate and we've put a number 1 within the column for those pages. So that's what allows us to kind of pinpoint which pages we need to copy across. And for each one that says 1, we're copying that that file or that page from the source site through to that destination site that we specified when we run that. So that's obviously going to be something we've manually triggered. It's not going to automatically run or anything like that. We're triggering it when we want to copy those files across. This one here I just really set up as an example for today because I was trying to think of something where you might use Microsoft Planner. So this one is triggered by a new item in a SharePoint list. So within our intranet, we have a SharePoint list, which contains details of every employee at KISS, so their name, their job title, and so on. So when we have a new starter, we will go into that list and add the details of the new starter. So by adding a new item in that list, it triggers this flow, which sends me an email of the details of the new starter, and it also creates a task within Microsoft Planner for their IT induction and assigns it to me. Now, obviously, you can do a lot more with that. You can say, actually, I also want to create a task for HR to go in and complete this, and for help desk to go in and complete this, and then I want to send an email or a Teams message. So that's when I kind of started. We're not using it at the moment, but there's obviously scope for additional steps to be added. This final one is an approval process, because we looked at that inbuilt approval within SharePoint, and I wanted to kind of highlight perhaps the advantages of using Power Automate over that. This approval process, again, obviously you can customize this. It doesn't have to work exactly this way, but it's triggered when a file is created within a set document library within the intranet. When a file is created or uploaded, it sends a message to a channel within Microsoft Teams, with a bit of a description, you know, this file's been created by this person, can you please go in and review it? It then starts an approval process. So Power Automate includes approval steps that you can use. And there's different options. So things like, if you had maybe 3 approvers, are we happy if just one person goes in and approves it? Does that mean the document's approved? Or you might say, actually, no, I need to make sure that every single one of those 3 people approves it in order for that document to be approved. So you can specify exactly how it's going to run in there. The approvals, the way it's set up, it generates an email, and also if you turn it on, it generates a Microsoft Teams notification as well. The condition looks at whether it's been approved or not, and if it has, it's posting an approval message to the Teams channel to notify everyone that the document's been approved. It's also moving the file to a kind of an approved folder. So we've got that distinction between the documents that are still in draft or have not yet been approved and those documents that have been approved. And it's adding the name of the individual or individuals that approved the document to the file properties. So it's adding it into a column that I've set up so we can go in and see, you know, who approved it. And the approval process, there'll be a whole audit trail behind it as well. So the way that the approvals works, it kind of logs who approved it, when they approved it, any comments they made. If it's not approved, then we'll just post a message in the Teams channel, just letting everyone know the document hasn't been approved and nothing happens with that document. Obviously, I could add steps to do other things, but at the minute, it would just stay in that kind of draft folder. This is an extra step here. So I mentioned earlier that if a flow fails, sometimes you're not notified straight away. And if it's perhaps a workflow that isn't as important, maybe that doesn't matter. With something like document approvals, if there is an issue with the flow, I would want to know about it straight away. So this additional step here is set up to say, if this action, start an approval, either times out for some reason or fails for some reason, then run this step. It's going to send me an email. Again, you could do it differently. You could say, actually send me a Teams message or post in the channel, and then it's going to terminate the flow completely and mark it as failed. So if I'm going in and reviewing the runs within Power Automate, I can see exactly where that failed run is. So that's optional, but I think quite useful to have in. One of the ones I didn't include, and I will just mention, is we do also use Power Automate for event RSVPs. So we have, for example, like a golf and spa event, and we send out a form on Microsoft Forms for individuals to respond to that invitation and put in, you know, what they want to eat and if they want a hotel and things like that. That's also run through Power Automate, so that when people submit that form, it takes those answers, it runs through different actions depending on those answers, and it eventually also generates an email to that individual with a calendar invite attached. Obviously, if they said they're going, if they didn't say they're going, we're not going to send them an invite on Outlook, but they would receive an email. They can easily add it to their calendar. So that's another example as well. So hopefully through that, you've seen kind of the different ways it can be used and the advantages that it provides. As with everything, if this is something you were looking to implement, there are obviously a few stages you'd need to go through, best practice. So before you do it, what are your objectives? What are you looking for that workflow to do? What are you looking for that outcome to be? the key stakeholders, who's going to be affected? Is the end user going to be affected? Who is going to be responsible for things like managing that flow moving forward, particularly if it fails, you need to do any troubleshooting. Assessing your existing workflows, so what can be improved? Perhaps the steps in your existing workflow are absolutely fine, we just want them to be automated, or perhaps it gives you an opportunity to look at the existing workflow and say, actually, it doesn't quite work, so maybe actually we should do this step first and then this step. So it gives you a chance to review that before actually putting it into Power Automate. Training and engagement, so again, whoever those key stakeholders are, making sure that they are on board, their understanding of how to use Power Automate if they're going to be involved in that part of it. And as always, continually monitoring and evaluating the effectiveness. So even with the flows that I've had running for several years, like the cybersecurity, every year at least I go in and check it and make sure, is there anything that can make this a little bit more efficient, anything that we can do differently. Can we help you? That's the ultimate question at the end, is if you were sitting there thinking that looks great, but I haven't really got the time to go in and learn Power Automate or try and set it up, or what if I do it and it goes wrong? We're here if you want us to have a look at any workflows that you're looking to create, to plan those solutions for you, to build them for you, and also with any training as well. So it's not just the building of the workflow, it's the training on the ongoing management of that, so that hopefully once we've set it up, you are then able to manage it yourselves moving forward. So if that is something you're interested in, then by all means drop us a message or send us an email, and we can certainly get in contact with you and start having a look at that.